Now, things have changed dramatically. I'd like to bring up Mark Zuckerberg, who now wears tennis shoes. Mark. You can sit. You don't have to like. You can come closer to me. I won't bite.
All right.
So, Mark, you remember the first question I asked you last year?
Oh yeah.
I asked you, how's the financing going?
Yeah. And I said we're going to close it next week.
So let me ask you, how's the financing going?
Well, I wish I could say the same thing as I said last year. So last year we were basically right in the middle of discussing ad partnerships with a bunch of companies, and as you know, we went with Microsoft and did this advertising partnership, which has become a much broader partnership where we now work with them on other technology as well, including search, which we launched most recently, and we took an investment from them. And the terms of that were really good and really favorable to us. So what we've been doing is, as part of that round, we just have had the ability to take more money. And as time has gone on, we've considered it. It's not clear that we really need it at this point. So it's not really clear that there's going to be anything to announce. But that's basically what I think you're reading about.
Trips to Dubai.
I've never been to Dubai. Apparently, it's nice this time of year.
Well, Gideon must have told you that. That's the CFO.
Oh.
Okay, we can move on. Do you need money?
No.
All right, we got that one checked.
No.
We spoke before this, and thank you for taking the time so that I don't surprise you with anything. And one of the things you told me with regards to the discussions around money was that you're not primarily focused now on optimizing for revenue, but there's been a lot of discussion and articles written recently saying that you might need to worry about that faster than you thought given the economic climate. True, false?
Well, here's what I'd say. So, 2008 has been a year where we've mostly focused on growing the user base. Right? We've gone from around 50 million users at the beginning of the year to now more than 100 million users. Right? It seemed like we had 100 million users a couple of months ago, and now we're already at around 125, and it's just growing really quickly. And a lot of what we've done is made it so that we can grow internationally. So there's a team at Facebook that worked on the international strategy, and basically what they did is they made it so that all the language on the site, all like 300,000 words, it's a really language-intensive site because of things like newsfeed, could just be translated by people into their native languages. And we just opened it up and made it so that people could translate it themselves. And it's just been a method that's worked extremely well. So we've started off with, we have more than 20 languages available now, and there's just a whole lot in the pipeline. But that's been, I think, by far the primary focus this year. And that's what I've been talking about a lot. And I think as I've been talking about growth and how that's just a really important strategic thing for us, we want to make it so that everyone across the world can share and connect with the people around them. One of the things that I've also said is that while we're doing this and growth is our top priority, we're not as focused on optimizing revenue. But I think in the past I've really understated that, and I think some people have taken that to mean that we don't have a revenue strategy or we're not building anything like that at all, which is actually completely wrong, right? While we're doing this, we have two very strong revenue lines, both direct and brand sales, and online sales, which the online channel we launched last November. And both are doing really well. On the direct side, we work with more than 2/3 of the top 100 advertisers in the US to have really interesting brand experiences, and we can talk about that in a bit if it's something of interest. One of the big focuses as we've grown across the world is just opening up new offices in all these different places. So we just announced we're opening one up in France. We have had one open in London for a while. We announced one in Dublin. So just kind of expand that effort. And then the other big story has been the online channel. And now we have thousands and thousands of advertisers who are just coming to the site and putting in their credit card and targeting this exact people that they want to reach, and are having pretty good results with that.
So how does it break down? Can you give me a rough, is there one that's like, do you have a Popeye arm on one side like direct and kind of a 90-pound weakling arm on the other? Or is it roughly the same amount from your online versus your brand direct
So I'm not going to get into a lot of very specific numbers.
But just tell me the percentages.
Yeah, no, well, a percentage would be a number. What I'd say is that they're both strong and they're both growing very quickly, right? So, and they're growing in different ways. I mean,
your revenues generally are in the hundreds of millions.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we've said, hundreds of millions in revenue.
So let's break down then that a third line of revenue, which I'll call Microsoft. When you did the deal, it was a very big part of your revenue mix, right?
Earlier on, it represented a larger portion. And what we've done as time has gone on is we've just wanted to make sure that we had a greater control over the different levers, right? So at this point, it's it's still millions of dollars, but it's a much smaller part of the revenue than either of the other two pieces.
Right. Do you think Steve Ballmer's happy with the price he paid?
I think the deal was about more than the investment. Right? I mean, that's the thing that everyone is focused on, but it was really a partnership where, first we were working with them on ads. Now we've worked with them on a bunch of other things, just including, contact portability between sites. Most recently, we're working with them on search. And what we found was that they've been a really good partner for us. And some people are surprised by that, but I mean, the reason is because they're in a place where they really want to try new things, right, and take an innovative approach to advertising and search and some of these markets where they're clearly not the incumbent, right? So they've been a very good partner in terms of fit for what we're trying to do, because we're also trying to build new things. And I think we're both pretty happy with the rate at which we're experimenting with new things. The investment was just something that we wanted to do in order to tie things a little bit closer together. But I think the main thing is just the products that we're building, and we just continue to roll out new things.
But do you think Steve's happy with the price he paid?
It's not clear that that's why they made the investment.
Okay.
So I think a lot of people obsess over the price. Right?
I'm sorry.
And no, not just you. I mean, it's something that I've had to a lot of questions about this over the last year since we did this.
Well, it was $15 billion. I mean, it was a lot of money, and I think it took everybody by wow. One of the things I think that raised some concerns was how are you going to, particularly now in this economy, ever grow in and past that price? It sets a certain watermark that you don't want to have a down round. You don't want your employees feeling like I'm never going to get liquid, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think that taking money at a certain price necessarily sets the strategy of the company, right? I mean, when you're going out, if you're going to take an investment, you want to take it on the best terms that you can get. We felt like we got favorable terms. It was at a very good point in the market, right, in terms of just the macro economy, and it just made sense for us to do. I mean, in terms of going public, I think we've stated pretty clearly a bunch of times that we aren't planning on going public for a few years. I think that's pretty much decided for us at this point because of the macro economy. Right. But besides that, I think that doesn't change our plan in any way. And I don't think that we don't feel any type of pressure to live up to $15 billion. Obviously we want to do the best that we can do, and we believe that we're going to build a really good business. If we can succeed in making it so that everyone across the world, or even a very large percentage of people, are using Facebook and all of the different applications in the development community to share information and connect with the people around them, then that's a really powerful change in the world. And we think that we can couple that with just building a really good business around that. But on a day-to-day basis, there really is no thought into, okay, we need to do this to justify a $15 billion valuation. And I think that there's been a lot of attention around that. But as a private company, the day-to-day valuation is just something that we have the benefit of not having to worry about the oscillations of, especially in an economy like this, where I think it's a really difficult thing for larger public companies, and their employees.
Oh no, Jerry seemed to think it was a piece of cake yesterday.
Well, not just Yahoo. I think all these companies, right? There are tons of companies where the stock is down, whatever it is, 50% this year.
Well,
and it's just,
I didn't really rib Paul Otolini this morning, but his stock is down from 28 to about 16, so it's not easy anywhere right now, that's for sure. Can you remind people how many people work at Facebook?
Sure. It's a bit more than 700 at this point. And the breakdown is
For whatever reason, I just assumed that you guys had been hiring like mad and you were like in the thousands. What are the plans this year? Do you have a hiring freeze on?
No. We're really continually hiring really good people. So I mean, I think the key emphasis for us at this point is just hiring really great technical people, right? I mean, that's always the most important thing. So engineers, great folks in tech ops, great designers, product managers. I mean, the people who are building things, right, who are going to help us continue to grow and build just the different user products and the different revenue products and the platform products that we need. That's the core. And I mean, we're also really aggressively expanding the sales effort, especially internationally. And I mean, the strategy there has basically been first grow in a market, then if we're succeeding there, and a lot of people are using the site to share information, there's a good ecosystem around it, then we'll kind of go in afterwards and we'll couple that with having a sales office where we can then sell things. And I mean, that's been a different strategy than other folks. I mean, some companies have put a sales office in before, and sometimes that's worked or not. But I mean, we're basically, I mean, there are countries now where, take France, for example. I was just visiting. It's really exciting there because it's around 7% of the population is on Facebook, and it's kind of at this inflection point where you could really see that if it continues growing at the rate, then the next time I go back, maybe in a year or so, it could be like 25 or 30% of the population. And so so we figured that was a good time to get started with an office there, and good expansion there. But I mean, so those two areas are the main places that we're hiring.
We should hook you up with Lance Armstrong, and maybe you guys can conquer France together.
Yeah, but I don't buy it.
Let's talk about Connect, Facebook Connect. It was announced, it's been announced for a while. You're in a sort of period of working with partners in sort of closed, and it's going to be open soon.
Yeah, and we just announced that anyone can now apply. So we basically had the closed beta, and now we're opening it up, and then we're working towards the fully open release.
A criticism of Facebook, whether it's true or not, that I'd like you to respond to is that it's a walled garden, that you jealously protect that social graph, and you don't want to, for example, join Open Social and be part of a broader distributed web. How do you respond to that?
Well, I guess the main thing that I would say is that there's this very clear transition that normally happens from closed systems to open systems, right? So in a mature environment, I think a lot of these technical systems end up being pretty open, but they also need to start somewhere, right? So I mean, I think we've taken really big steps in terms of opening up the industry, right? I mean, we were the first ones to launch we launched Facebook Platform, which was kind of the first social platform, and kind of spawned all this development. And then, I mean, some of the other initiatives that Google has had and that others have had are really good, and I think they're really interesting. Over time, I think that it's worth exploring how the companies can work together. At this point, they're much smaller than Facebook is, just independently. So, and also just from talking to developers, we've gotten a lot of feedback that people prefer using our interfaces like FBML, FBJS. And I mean, that may not always be true, right? I mean, I think over time, whether it's open social or something else, or whether ours becomes the open standard, I think, I mean, these systems tend to move towards openness over time. I mean, one example that I think about is like, if you look at the PC industry and how that came about, I think it's pretty commonly held belief at this point that the reason why Microsoft ended up being such a strong company is because they, instead of trying to own the whole computer top to bottom, they instead just went and tried to build this operating system so that people could build software and plug in any type of hardware below, and that would be basically like a more open system. And I think it's pretty easy to overlook the fact that that wasn't the first iteration on how that kind of development worked, right? I mean, in order for Microsoft and the software model with Windows to really make sense, first, someone had to be building computers and creating demand, and then it got to a point where it really made sense for that to happen. So I think the challenge that we have is to bring people along that whole path, right? So first, get people onto Facebook and make it so that people can be comfortable sharing information online, right? I mean, I think we take for granted that 4 years ago when Facebook was getting started, most people didn't want to put up any information about themselves on the internet, right? So we got people through this really big hurdle of wanting to put up their full name, a real picture, mobile phone number in a ton of cases, connections to real people. And the way that happened was by building really good privacy controls, right? And then
they're not always used. I have a Google News alert for Facebook, and today it showed 3 people who got fired because of what they put on their profile, including a Patriots cheerleader and a backup center for the Texas Longhorns. It's a bad day for stupid, drunk Facebook photos.
Well, the privacy controls are there. Anyhow, the point is, so as time goes on, people have shared more and more information, and there's this clear trend towards that.
Right.
And we looked at where things were last year in 07, and just realized that each of our applications, whether it's photos or groups or videos or whatever it is, kind of represent one way for people to share information. And we just realized that there was no way that we were ever going to be able to build all of the different applications and ways that people wanted to share information. So therefore, we built this platform. And over time, we just expect it to get more and more decentralized, right? So the next iteration of platform in a pretty big way is Facebook Connect, as you mentioned, right? And it's basically going from making it so that most of the development on Facebook is happening inside Facebook.com with Canvas pages and boxes and profiles and items and streams, to instead, people can now have all the same tools, but they can make it on their own website. They can build their own brand, have their own site, right? And have all the same integration with Facebook as they got with the original Facebook platform. And I just think as time goes on, we'll just see this very natural fanning out and decentralization of things. And I view it as a big part of Facebook's role in this ecosystem to just continue pushing that, right? Continue making it so that more people around the world are sharing information, so that people can bring their information to all these different places. But I think that there's a rate at which this will happen. And if we're not on the edge of pushing that out, then I don't think we're doing our job.
Well, you got a really good, I think, there wasn't anybody, and I think I said this last year, who wasn't, when you announced the platform, everybody rushed into their meeting rooms and said, what are we going to do? How are we going to take advantage of this? What are we going to build? A year later, a year and a half later, I think there's a sense, and I think it's fair to say, that the platform has not lived up to all of its potential. In that there's a head end of the platform, some very successful developers, but there isn't a very robust kind of neck and shoulders or torso or whatever you want to say. There's been, some criticism from parties here around the idea of, we can't throw sheep our way into the next version of Web 2. Is Connect an attempt to address some of those limitations of the platform?
Well, I think we made a number of changes earlier in the year and Connect that I think are just important evolutions, right? So for a number of reasons, in the first design of the site and with platform, what we basically did was published a lot of information about people who were adding different applications, just once, right? And what that did is it kind of skewed the incentives in the ecosystem towards application developers trying to get people to add their application instead of actually trying to build applications that created a lot of active engagement and sharing, right? So you get this dynamic where there would be a lot of applications that people got to add themselves once, and then the box would just be in the person's profile for a long time, basically acting as an advertisement for that application forever. So what we did was we changed the whole model so it's more feed-based now, right? So now the amount of distribution that an application gets is directly proportional to the amount of engagement that it's creating and information that it's helping people share. And what that basically did was it took this set of applications that were out there, and it made the ones that were creating a lot of active engagement and sharing grow at a much faster rate and just have a lot more success. And there are a number of examples out there that are pretty clear to see. Right?
Well, what are the ones that you could give us 3 or 4 that you think are good examples?
Well, I think recently, just with the election, I mean, what's happened with causes is is a really interesting example of just how they were using status and streams. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I think it's growing at hundreds of thousands of people a day. But I mean, the flip side of that is also, frankly, that a lot of applications that were being developed that weren't using Facebook in a social way and were really just using it to get boxes in people's profiles, those have seen a decline in growth. And I mean, when we were going into making those changes, we knew that. And we made a conscious decision that this would be a better ecosystem that we wanted, that we thought we were moving towards. And we just realized that, we kind of had set up platform in a way that we knew we were going to have to iterate, and we just decided to make that change. Facebook Connect, I think, is a really important change as well, right? So what that is instead of being anything involving really user interface, right, around boxes or Canvas pages, it's people can make their own websites completely, and it's basically people can now use their Facebook identity and connections and bring their friends along with them, as well as any content they have on Facebook to any other site, right? So that is a somewhat different approach, in that it eliminates all the other things, the other parts that were there, and just makes it so that it's inherently making a site social to now plug into Facebook Connect. So we think that that the partners that are working with us on Connect are going to be very rich applications. And I mean, we took a slightly slower ramp-up period with the closed beta that we've had just to confirm that, just because we were completely blown away by the adoption of Facebook Platform in 2007. Right? I mean, the fact that we launched it and within a week there were applications that had millions of users, and within months there were hundreds of thousands of developers, were really humbling to watch. But it also, we learned from that that we want to do stuff in a slightly more controlled way, just so we don't have to make these painful changes that often. And I think our hypotheses for how Facebook Connect to play out seem to be going pretty well.
How do you and your partners make money with Facebook Connect?
Well, it's not a very direct thing. So I guess what I'd say is, like, for the first version, there isn't anything necessarily associated with it that's going to be revenue generating. Although there are clear derivative effects where if people are using their Facebook account and friends and information all over the web, then there's also a clear correlation with how much they're using Facebook. And the whole model is ad driven, right? So just like with Facebook Platform, there's the question of how are we going to make money, how are people going to make money? I mean, the model there was, we didn't provide any proactive tools. We figured that the ecosystem would, and it did. But also, we made it wide open so that people could run their own ads or have payments or do whatever they wanted. And we also just put an ad there, and we made money off of that. So we make money just depending on how people are using the site and engaging with it and sharing information. And I think the same is going to be true here.
Let's talk about the online ad piece. It was a year ago that you rolled it out. Engagement ads, right? And I think now most of us in this room who are on Facebook, how many people, everybody raise your hand, you're on Facebook. I'm assuming that it's, yeah, there we go. I'm just checking. By the way, raise your hand if you're on Twitter. Is Twitter just a feature of Facebook?
Oh, that's tough. I think they're doing really good stuff. I'm really impressed by what they've done.
And?
Is it a feature? I think that they're building something pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah,
is there a build-buy spreadsheet in Gideon's office around Twitter?
A build-buy spreadsheet? I don't think the CFO makes analyses of building stuff.
Okay, all right.
We're a building-driven
company.
company.
Whose office is that in?
But we don't have, it's an open floor plan. I think what I'd say is, we have status updates and wall posts and these types of things too. I think that they've done a really good job of making it's a very elegant model.
When am I going to see? Is Twitter one of your partners for Facebook Connect?
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's move on. Let's get back to the engagement ads. So most of us are probably now used to seeing our friends show up in the ads on the left or the right, and someone endorsed this or someone bought that. Is that the model, or where is it going to go, and how are marketers responding to that, and what kind of marketers are they, right? Are they the little guys, like what happened with AdSense, where it was just this boom in small business, and then the big guys came in later, or who are the advertisers that are drawn to this, and how's the community responding to it?
So the ones that we're mainly working with now, this is more on the brand side for this point, and the ads perform pretty well, but it's also really early. So we have the second iteration right now where we basically launched last November this the online channel, right, and the first version of engagement and social ads. And now we basically, the ads that you're pointing out on the homepage are the second iteration of engagement ads, which they have something built into them right there for people to share information or pass something along. And those it's a really big jump off of where we were before. And the basic reasoning behind it and the thinking is, advertising on the web and in social environments is less about just hitting someone with a message and more about just a two-way dialogue and engagement, or a multi-way dialogue, right? So when people come to Facebook, they're not necessarily going just to see some message or see some news. What they want to see is what's going on with their friends and the people that they care about and the people that they're subscribing to. So when someone sees an advertisement or a piece of content, take for example a movie trailer, and they see a friend who's commented on it and has either said that they want to go to the movie, or they find it interesting, or even something interesting that they found about it, even if it was negative, that makes it so that people are way more likely to engage with that ad, right? So we've seen just a number of interesting examples of this. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we've done with entertainment. Yesterday, there was a really interesting example that we did with the New York Times on the election, where they basically had this engagement ad around the headline for Obama wins the election, and they made it so that people could pass that along as a gift and a piece of content, and more than 200,000 people did that in the day. And a lot of people can also, companies and users can make these pages, right, which are basically ways to engage with people on the site, and that's free. So the New York Times had one of those for a while, and it had tens of thousands of members on it. But just having this ad for one day alone more than tripled the membership of that, and got a lot of different conversations going on, different videos they had. So it was, I think that it was a really interesting case for them, where they got a lot of benefits.
We have a lot to talk about and not a lot of time. Guys, if you want to start coming up to ask Mark a question or two, please do. I want to ask you about something that's come up over and over in the last couple of days, which is Facebook being banned by enterprises. We had the CIO of the Army saying that Facebook was a problem for the Army, because of course everybody generally in the Army is young and they want to be on their Facebook accounts, but there are issues with that, any number of issues with that. And Paul Otellini showed a very interesting enterprise application that looked a lot like Facebook. But he said it doesn't have the security or the firewall understandings of firewall. There's just all sorts of stuff that makes Facebook not good for like Intel to use as an internal group platform for Intel employees, for example. What do you make of that market, and are you addressing that?
So
are you concerned about that?
So we've actually seen anecdotally a trend in the other direction, right? So there are industries like the banking industry, for example, where they have to really closely monitor any communication that employees make. So originally their take was just block Facebook completely, right? Because it's this communication thing. And now, anecdotally, what we've heard is that a lot of people at those companies, instead what they're doing is they're making it so people can use Facebook, but then anything that's direct communication, whether it's chat or inbox, then that you can't do at work. But they've moved in the direction of making it so that people can actually use Facebook at work. And I think that that's because a lot of people are seeing that it's just really valuable to have this kind of communication between people. There are even these examples where a lot of folks are either making people take time out or encouraging whole divisions of companies to get on Facebook and interact in that way. And it's not really that surprising. So at Facebook, we have a lot of internal tools that we use to communicate inside the company. And rather than like traditional enterprise tools that are pretty hierarchical, kind of you force people to fill out different things about like projects they're working on or whatever it is. The tools are basically built off of the same type of incentive systems and structures that the site itself is built off of, where basically you share information, you get feedback. That makes it so that people are basically incentivized to share more information. It actually ends up being this really robust internal communication system where people are constantly sharing ideas and collaborating on different things in the company, or talking about what they're working on and getting help from other people. And to me, Facebook right now isn't an enterprise company, and we don't have direct plans to get into any of that stuff anytime soon. But just seeing that as a prototype, and just a case of how that stuff is working just really gives me a lot of confidence that someone will build something really good in this space.
I have one more question, then we'll go to questions here. And this has it's sort of, I'm going to attempt to wrap all of it in one. We talked about your engagement ads. We talked about Connect and the idea of exporting a feed of your social graph and your actions and content on Facebook out into the world and creating applications around that. If I'm Google, I'd love to check that out. I'd love to get a feed. As a matter of fact, I'd love to encourage everyone at Google to take my Facebook graph so that I can make AdSense for Facebook. Is this why you're not doing open social?
Wait, I'm not sure I understand.
I just think, there's a chess game going on right now, is there not?
I think people make this out to be something way more dramatic than it is.
Well, that's my job. We are on stage.
Fair enough. Yeah, so what I'd say is I don't think that anything is motivated by that, right? And I think it's really easy to see, to kind of point to different moves that the companies make and think that it's that. But I mean, there are really complex challenges around either privacy on the one hand, making it so that the two platforms can interoperate, and just the willingness for the two companies to do that, and kind of move in a common direction over time. And I expect that a lot of these problems will be solved over time, but I also wouldn't trivialize them, right? So I think there's just a lot going on, and I would expect that over time, we definitely see this very clear trend of people sharing way more information online, and people sharing more information openly with more people. And I believe that we'll get to this point where the majority of people are comfortable sharing a lot of information pretty openly with large sets of people, and then you can have public streams and things like that. And and I think as Facebook has kind of gone and developed over the years, we've definitely moved in that direction more. But it's also built around this core of people being able to control exactly who they're sharing information with, and that's going to be an important thing. Then on the platform side, I think it's really early, right? I think platforms like this take years or decades to even develop, and I think what they're doing is really cool. I think what we're doing at this point is much bigger, and from the feedback that we've gotten, people prefer a lot of the interfaces that we have. But I mean, I think that I'm not necessarily saying that as time goes on we wouldn't want to work with them, and I don't think that they necessarily don't want to work with us. So I think it's an exciting area that's developing, and I think we'll just have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, well, we'll be watching. Question over here.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. And my name is Valentina. I'm with Thoughts.com. My question was, when you came, you started talking about how you guys are planning on going to different languages and everything else. I was wondering, in the future, do you guys have a plan for retention of members?
Well, this has always been one of the interesting stats about Facebook, is that out of all the active users, right, which the vast majority of people who are on Facebook are active, which the stats that we give are active users, so people who are using it within 30 days. And then we've always had this pretty amazing stat where around 50% of the users are active every day. So we don't do anything specifically to focus on like getting people back to the site. What we do is just build a product that helps people share information and connect with people. And the belief is that that's such a strong trend that's happening in the world, and it's kind of been playing out over the last any number of years, and just going to continue going on in the future, that if we continue building stuff that basically makes it easier for people to share information, a platform that makes it so that people can share information in all the different ways that they want, on any device that they want, with exactly the audiences that they want, and there's a lot of development that needs to happen in all of those places, then I would expect that next year people will share twice as much information as they are this year, and then the year after that they'll share twice as much information as they are next year. And and that just means that people are using Facebook and applications in the ecosystem more and more, right? And maybe like less of that will be on Facebook.com, and more of it will be on mobile phones or on other sites or things like that. But I think as long as the stream of information is just constantly increasing, and we're doing our job and our role in kind of like pushing that forward, then I think that that's just been the best strategy for us.
We have time for one more.
Glad it's me. Hi. My name is Moya, and I'd like to ask something about something that's really incredibly current and relevant for us right now that I'm struggling with. We, speaking of causes and elections and stuff like that, created a huge presence on Facebook with a page around a political topic, a ballot initiative, Proposition 8. And it grew to be 140,000 members, and it's just a huge adoption. Now the election is done, proposition is over. We have to figure out what to do. And so my question is, do you see pages end of life or morph or change? I mean, people change, but they change their faces. But we have to figure out how to keep the community or change it. So I'd like your opinion.
Well, I mean, I think we've seen a lot of examples on Facebook of people organizing just interesting movements for things that they want, right? And there's a lot of just casual social use of people staying connected with their friends and family. And then there are really interesting examples of when people organize just really large-scale protests or things like that. I'm not saying that this is a protest, but I think just organizing large amounts of people, whether it's in the causes application or if it's groups, there are also pages. And I think a lot of people have used these things very successfully, whether it's to try to overthrow different regimes or to try to lobby a company against some policy that they don't like. And I think people have had pretty varying success with these. And I mean, some have been just phenomenally successful. And so I think that the tools are definitely there to do something like this.
Yeah, don't stop working on that. That sucked. Well, Prop 8 was a...
Yeah.
And by the way, Facebook was a big supporter of the No on 8, so thank you for that. Not that I'm getting political or anything, but hell, it's the season. We're out of time. My own people are yanking me. So, Mark, as always, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.